Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Each week, people ask me a bunch of questions, and the following week, I answer them. So that's what this is. It should be a pretty good one. I got a ton of stuff to show. I'm gonna show actually some books right from dollar bin books all the way up to mega grails. So that should be pretty exciting. Should be a fun part. Let's get right into it. The very first question, I'm not going to answer, not in this video at least. And it comes from Antonio. Can you show us your favorite comic from each grade from 0.5 all the way up to 9.8, one per grade? Well, I'm going to do better. I'm not going to do it in this video, but I'll do it in the Friday challenge. So I'll show from all the way from the lowest grade all the way up to the highest grade in the challenge. I'm going to try to show one cover for each and my favorites all the way through. So stay tuned for that. That'll be the Friday challenge. So it'll be a lot of really great books. And there's a lot of, if you think about it, there's a lot of grades. There's, I don't know how many, 20 different books I would have to cover all those grades. I think it's actually more than that. So lots of books. It'll be on the Friday challenge. Okay. Chunko Comics wrote, as many Golden Age comics desirability is due to scarcity and great cover, are there any lesser known Golden Age comics that you feel are undervalued as they have both great cover and are rare scarce? Now, Adrift also wrote something similar, so I'm going to kind of put the two questions together. He wrote, are there any comics out there that have everything that a collector typically desires? Great artwork, popular theme, rarity, first appearance, etc., but simply don't attract much attention. So those two questions kind of similar, different ways of saying the same thing. I'm going to show you a few that I think are underrated. These are sort of affordable Golden Age books that I think are just underrated. I think these are just should be worth more. It should be worth more. Should be because based on the rarity and based on the desire, like what collectors go for. And the first one, I actually only discovered this recently, and I think it's in this current unboxing that I'm doing, is this one, Fast Fiction number 3. And the artwork in this and on the cover, I just think is really exceptional. I mean, look at this cover. Just really brilliant cover. Actually, let me kind of open this up a bit because, let me see, show you the back as well. Just this really great artwork, and it's all the way through like that. So just a really great book. And it's called Fast Fiction number 3. And this one, it's not an expensive book, like $50, $30, something like that. And it's relatively rare. I would say fairly low census. When I say rare, I'm talking Golden Age rare, which means under 100 copies. So that's reasonably rare. I think, compare that to the modern books, where there are like literally thousands of them. I think that's rare enough that it should be a fairly, hard book to find. Now, as I said, fairly affordable. Next one is actually, it's not really just this one book. It's really about the whole title, or company, I should say. And it is Ziff Davis. And this is a good example of a Ziff Davis book. Now, really depends on what you mean by underrated in terms of value. So underrated in the Golden Age can mean under like $100. Okay, this is like one of those under $100 books. Now, obviously, in super high grade, this book goes for more than $100 and much more than $100. But typically, you're not going to find them in super high grade unless you are very lucky. So typically, this is like around that $100 mark book. But Ziff Davis has these really brilliant painted covers, and for the most part, a lot of their books are underrated or undervalued. There's a few that are expensive, but for the most part, as I said, they're underrated. And I just think their artwork that they had for their books was quite impressive. So these are all basically cover buys, but actually the previous one has really great interior art as well. Now, another one that's kind of got one step further is this one, the Texan. Now, it's one that's slightly under the radar, and when I say that, it's like some people know, some people don't. Now, this one is, I think, by Jack Kamen, I believe. Or is it, no, or is it Bob Lubbers? Lubers, by Lubers. So this is a Lubers cover, but other issues in the title have Matt Baker art. And they generally don't go for that much, like anywhere from $50 to $100. Now, if people realize that it's Matt Baker art, well, then they charge more. But for the most part, they're a little bit under the radar. And I actually like this Rob Luber's cover. It's just it's quite nice. I like these fiery covers and girl in the red dress, and this guy's like this Indian's coming in with gonna like scalp her. It's just a really great classic cover. And as I said, these are affordable. I think I paid $30 for this or something, in that $20 to $30 kind of range. Just very affordable. And as I said, this has one step further because it has some of the artists are quite recognized, like Matt Baker. Another one that I thought is a good example of an affordable, again, when I think of affordable, I mean that $100 range, because, Golden Age, it can be expensive, especially when you get into pre-code horror. And this is a title and a book example that is around that. I think I just got it slightly under $100. Obviously, again, the grade, if it was higher grade, obviously we'd go for more, but it's a reasonable grade. It's probably like a 3 or a 4. It's a pretty cool cover. You got you got all the skulls, which are things that people collect for the Golden Age. You got this really crazy situation where he's putting honey on the guy so that the ants will eat his face. So just a pretty classic pre-code horror cover. So you got pre-code horror, you got skulls, you got crazy cover, you got all the different things, and it's a Marvel title. So lots going on for this book. Now, strangely, this one's actually a coded book where it's before the Comic Code Authority, but it's the old code, which is right there. But I thought, so I don't know how it got past whatever code. I don't think they really paid attention. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. So that's another example. And one last example is a title that really doesn't get the love that it deserves. And it's a Fawcett title. And now these are actually relatively rare compared to like the Captain Marvels of Fawcett. It's Captain Midnight. Again, another under $100 kind of book. But I think they have pretty cool covers. This is like some weird electric chair execution kind of cover with an alien. I don't know. Just a really cool cover. But yet doesn't go for as much as some of these other Golden Age books. So those are a few examples. I think there's a lot others that I could have came up with, but I think that kind of gives you a sense of where you can find some cool books that are still affordable. The big thing is like what I like to do is I like to look for titles like I always kind of mention Chamber of Chills or Witch's Tales or some of the other titles, or titles that have like some big book in them, and then I'll look at the other covers to see if if there's any cool covers that are equally as good but just not nearly as expensive. And generally you can find a lot. It's amazing how many things are just underrated for whatever reason. They just haven't been recognized by the mass yet. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. I hope you enjoyed it. Adrift also had another question, separate question. You seem to collect a lot of books that you don't appear to have much particularly a strong attachment to, but you seem to catch your eye for whatever reason. Do you ever ruminate on that and consider the money you've spent and the space you're taking up with the books that you'll likely only look at once, stow away, and hardly ever see again? On that theme, have you ever considered a complete reassessment of your collection, separating the wheat from the chaff, as it were? Okay, so I always ruminate on how much I've spent on these comics. Sometimes I'm like, ugh, I spent way too much on my comics, and it does bother me. But for the most part, I actually enjoy my comics, and I hope it seems like I do. I really do enjoy my comics. And one of the things that I do, because I really do enjoy my comics, is I do the weekly challenges. I do videos like this where I get to pull out random books to show you guys. Because when I do that, I'm looking through my books. I like to look through my books. Another thing that I really do like to do is have my display behind me and around me. There's like multiple displays actually. And because of that, I'm constantly changing them out so I can see more and more of my collection. I actually more upset about the fact that I can't see my books rather than just being like, oh, I have it, tossed to like some like bin or like storage area and never see it again. I actually prefer if I could just constantly have like them all around me and be able to visually see them all. That's more of a problem that I find. Now, there are books that I feel like, man, really, should I have been buying all these books? Sometimes I feel like the ones that really feel like that are the more modern books where it's like, how many covers where there's a girl posing can you get before it gets a little bit redundant? There's a lot of like modern books that are just not as interesting to me. I do feel that I like them, but they're not as interesting. Yeah, those times I feel like, okay, well, I have all these books, but they're really they're not as good as some of the other stuff that I have in my collection. Those books, I don't think I could ever say, hey, okay, let's take all those books and try to sell them. I'd probably get pennies on the dollar, and it's just not worth it. I like them enough to keep them for the price that I paid, but not necessarily like them as much as some of the other books where I don't display them as much, if that makes sense. So generally, I love my comics, pretty much all of them. Just some I will put higher on the list than others, if that makes sense. Okay. So the next question comes from Wayne Smith, who asked, and he's asked this a few times. I've answered this question before, but I'm going to answer it again. He asked, do you or any of your fellow collectors own an ashcan comic? And yes, we do. I actually brought two to show. I brought my Vampirella one. I just picked this up recently. This is Vampirella number 1 of the. See, you can see it says ashcan edition. Ashcans are just smaller comics. They're usually used as a way to showcase the book before it comes out. Sometimes nowadays, though, they seem to come out exactly the same time as the actual comic does. But this is the ashcan. And I also got an ashcan of Absolute Wonder Woman, because I'm a big Wonder Woman fan, so I figured I should get this ashcan. So it's just a really cool black and white version of the Wonder Woman Absolute Wonder Woman. So yeah. So those are some of my ashcans. I have more actually, but those are just some that I had handy. Hope you enjoyed that. So yeah, I know lots of people that actually do collect ashcans, specifically targeting them where they kind of like the idea of something that's a little bit more rare or obscure. Okay, next question comes from Matt. Matt asked, other than Superman or Action 1 or Batman 1 or Detective 27, what book that you don't have would you like to get the most? Okay, so every year I come up with my list of books that I'm aiming for within that year, and there's a few books that I always, I'm always kind of looking for, like Zombie Tramp #3. That's kind of almost like a joke with me that this one book that's a modern book, it seems to be unattainium. It's really hard to find. Um, that's a book that I'd really like to have. But also, for kind of the bigger books that I'm trying to chase after, that are kind of realistic expectation kind of books to go after for me, would be like King Comics #1. I always like to get that one because it's the first appearance of Popeye in comics. It's just one that I wanted to have for completing my Popeye collection. The other book that I'd really like to get is Four Color #16 from the first series of Four Color, which is the first appearance of Mickey Mouse in comics. I actually had worked out a deal with a couple people, but then they sold it before the deal actually happened. I was like, what? Okay, but it happens, whatever reason. So there are books that I do want, but I haven't quite gotten yet, and I think I'll get them eventually. I do feel like those books will come my ways eventually. Another one that I would like to get is the first cover appearance of Steamboat. That's another character I think is cool, and I think that'd be a cool one to get. Which is I think it's a Wiz Comics or Captain Marvel, one of the two. There's a few books that I would have on my list that I have actually a pretty long want list. It's actually kind of embarrassing. It's like this big long list of books that I'm chasing after, but those are some of the big ones. AJ Guez wrote, Son of Crom had a good video asking the difference between a grail, personal grail, and a key. What are your criteria for these categories, and can you give some examples of each? Yeah, so what I actually did a video about this, and I'll actually post it as like a pinned comment at the top of the pinned comments in this video, but I'll kind of reiterate it and actually show some books that kind of fit each category. So the way I actually defined it was I actually came up with 9 categories for the different ranges of value in comics. The first being Dollar Bin. Dollar Bin is a book that really doesn't have much value. Usually it's like, it could be a modern book that just doesn't sell for whatever reason. And after a while, it ends up in the Dollar Bin because they just want to move it along and push it, to the next person. A good example of that is this one. This is a Dollar Bin book. This is a Superman All In #19, and it's just I liked it because it's a cute cover. These trick or treat ones, but there's no real value to it except for me. I like it because it's a Dollar Bin. But it is a Dollar Bin book. It's just and a Dollar Bin book literally means it's worth $1 probably. So that's the first one. Another book that's another tier in those tiers would be Run Filler. Now, Run Filler can be slightly more expensive than a Dollar Bin book, all the way up to like $10, maybe $15 at the max, where it's just a book that fills in a run. It's not like, it doesn't have a key about it. It doesn't necessarily have a nice cover even. It could just be a book that fits into a run of books. Like, I'm a collector that likes to have a complete collection. I'm a completionist. I like to have all the books, even the ones that are not key books or not even great stories. They could be just a random book that just fits the numbers so that I have all the numbers. Well, a good example of that is this one. This is a recent pickup. This is Savage Dragon 276. No value. It just has cover value. It's not an expensive book. It's not a bad cover, but it's just a run filler. It's just another book to complete that collection of Savage Dragon in this case. So yeah, so that's a run filler. The next level that I came up with is what's called a minor key. Now, minor keys are anywhere from that $15 to $25 range. It's not like super expensive. And a lot of books fit into those minor keys. Like it's sort of like, oh, the first team up or the first some random thing, some small event, or maybe first appearance of a minor character. Now, here's a book that kind of fits into that. This book, probably in a higher grade, like in a 9.8, could be more of a bigger book, but in like a fine to very fine book, it's like a $15 to $20 book. And this is the Muppet Babies #1, and it's the first appearance of the Muppet Babies. Kind of a minor key. Obviously, the Muppet Babies aren't as popular as Spider-Man, maybe, but they are cool. So definitely a cool book, but it's in that minor key kind of books. Muppet Babies in that kind of minor key. Next one is kind of a key. So you got minor keys, you got keys, and a key is an example of a book that's maybe worth $25 to $50. So a little bit more of a value associated to it. Now, this book is a good example of that. This is an earlier DC book. This is Johnny Thunder #117. Now, this is partly into that higher level tier, not because of the popularity of the character, but because it's an older book. It's a 10-cent issue. It's like so early, like early 60s or late 50s. I think it's like 59, somewhere around there. And it is the first appearance of Madame 44. And that's her right there. So it's a minor, or it's a key, I should say. It's a key book. It goes for about $40 to $50. So a little bit more expensive than the Muppet Babies, for example. So it's in that next tier. This next one, my example might not quite fit because it is actually a more expensive book. But the next book, next kind of term, and this was a term that was developed by the immortal Biggie Shaq. I'll give him credit because he's the one that kind of coined the term, is a banger. And it was actually a term that was used a lot a few years back. I don't hear it as much nowadays, but a banger is a comic that is just cool. It's cool, a little bit more expensive, where it's about 50 to maybe 100 to 150, maybe even slightly more, but generally in that $50 to $100 range. And it's a book that you can show to your friends and say, hey, look, oh, isn't this a banger? It's like a cool book. Might be a cool cover. It might be a cool, more important first appearance or kind of something important. And the next book I have to show, this book is actually a little bit more. This is more like a $200 book, but it's still, it'd be kind of a classified in that banger status, where this is Strange Adventures #79, and it's a classic snowmen from outer space that are going to conquer the world with their laser beam eyes, as they do. So just a really cool book, a banger. And this is sort of in that banger area, more on the high end of that banger status, but definitely a banger. Okay, the next level is major keys. So these are books that are in that $100 all the way up to maybe $500. So more expensive kind of books that are going to get a little bit more money. Like these are major keys, and maybe a more desired character, first appearance, something that's a little bit bigger in terms of what collectors chase after. A good example of that is this book. This is Betty and Veronica #320. This is the first appearance of Cheryl Blossom. And Cheryl Blossom is kind of like the third wheel. I don't know how to describe it. She's like the extra love interest for Archie that wasn't necessarily necessary. But you know, they needed a redhead, so they just brought in Cheryl Blossom to fit that role. But this is, and there's her at the top there. And her first appearance, pretty expensive book, anywhere from $200 to $300, and in high grades, you know, can be up to $1,000. So this is one of those major keys. Now, grade obviously comes into play here because, you know, a low grade copy will generally, you know, maybe put it into that lower range, but a major key is definitely very grade dependent. Obviously, a 9.8 of this, it would be into that maybe another tier, the next tier. Okay, the next tier would be big boy books. Big boy books are books that I think are above that $500 threshold, where they're just expensive. They're big boy books. You have to, you know, have a job to pay for them, basically, because they're books that you really have to kind of pony up some big money to buy. And really, big boy books range from that low of 500 all the way up to maybe $10,000. So they're big books. You have to have a big pocketbook to be able to buy them. They're also known as blue chip comics, and sometimes they're referred to also as personal grails, where people say, well, you know, it's at that $500 tier, and they say it's a grail, but it's a personal grail. It's maybe most people wouldn't quite consider it a grail, but it's more of a personal grail where you say, hey, I put extra value on it because I have something to it where I feel like that extra connection. So these big boy books are in that range of $500 to $10,000, which is a pretty big book. A good example of that, and this is a personal grail of mine, I was excited to get this one, is my Startling 49. Now, this is like a $4,000 book. So yeah, definitely an expensive book, definitely a big boy book, definitely my personal grail, and it's a blue chip book. Blue chip books generally are a little bit more, they can be a little bit more broad-based, basically books that have sort of more established value. There's a little extra connotation to blue chips, but generally they're more expensive books. But this is definitely in that range of big boy books, where it's a classic Alex Schomburg cover and first appearance of Bender. Okay, next tier is the Grail. And you'll hear people say, oh, grails. Most of the time, they're really talking about personal grails, so they're more on the lower end. But a grail for the to be a stickler on, you know, price, how much money you have to spend to have what's called a grail, I think should be above that $10,000 mark. So those are books that are kind of in that high end tier where you're like, wow, this is this is a bit beyond just a big boy book. This is a really big boy book. I don't know, it's like just that next level, where you know, you have to really save up to buy these books. And a good example of that and is this one, Amazing Fantasy 15. Definitely in that next tier of Grail. First appearance of Spider-Man. You know, it's one that in high grade, this could be in the next tier, or even the tier after that. This is a really big book. It's a Grail book, and it's definitely one that most people would say, okay, this is a Grail book. And again, it's very grade specific. Now, this is one of those books that even in the lowest grade is still a Grail. It's just like such an expensive book, because of just how desired this book is. So Amazing Fantasy is definitely a Grail book. And as I said, in super high grade, if it's like a 9.6, well, it might fit into one of the later categories. The next category, so we went from Grail, which is really that $10,000 all the way up to maybe $50,000. So pretty expensive books. The next tier would be what I call a super Grail or a mega Grail. A lot of people when I posted the original video, a lot of them were saying, hey, you should really refer to it as a mega grail. And I was like, oh, okay. But Stephen actually was the one that came up with the idea of a super grail. I think mega grail is a good term as well. And it's really that tier from 50,000 all the way up to $500,000. These are really big books. These are ones that definitely people would be like, oh, okay, that's a really big book. You've spent some money. I could buy a house with that book, that kind of level. A good example of that is this one. And this one goes for about $110,000 if it was not restored. Mine's restored, kills the value, but it's still an expensive book. Might even fit into this category, even as a restored book. Definitely a big book. So yes, this is what I would consider a super grail or mega grail, where it's in that $100,000 spot. Definitely a big book. Wonder Woman #1, very desired. And it's one of those books that if it's in super high grade, it's in the $1 million club, where, people do pay up for this book. Okay, and that brings me to the next tier, the last tier, which I call the Holy Grails. Now, the Holy Grails are really books that are in that 500,000 up to whatever infinite amount of money that people are willing to spend on a book. They're either super, super rare and there's just, you'll never find again, or they are books that are like the Action Comics #1, the Detective 27, the Detective 31, the Captain America #1, books that command huge, huge money. Batman 1 in a higher grade, Superman 1 in a higher grade. So it's generally going to be these books that are high grade and highly desired. So this is a good example of if it was not only just, if it was maybe like a 9 or 9.2, then it would be in that next tier, where it would be like a holy grail of books. You just don't see them that often. They're very desired. So those are my tiers. I hope you enjoyed it. So it kind of runs the range from all the way from dollar bin all the way up to those holy grails, which are in the millions of dollars. Just these crazy books you hear about once in a lifetime. Like when AF-15 sold for in a 9.6, it sold for $3.6 million. That's a once in a lifetime kind of auction and sale. Those are the holy grails. Those are the ones where people go, okay, I get it. That's a big book. So you don't see those that often. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Next question comes from Ronald Burgess. He wrote, Alan, what do you think of what Tom Brevoort said about Mary Jane to get back with Peter, and where Tom Brevoort said, if you expect Mary Jane to get back with Peter, forget it and stop reading the book. Okay, so I got to give some context to that. I don't really follow him that much. I'm not a big Tom Brevoort fan or anything like that. But I did research this in order to kind of be able to answer the question. Now, he's a writer for Marvel, and he also is a commentator. He has a podcast where he basically said, hey, if you're expecting Mary Jane to marry Peter Parker in the regular issues of Spider-Man, forget it. Okay, and what he was kind of was kind of talking about is that the regular series of Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker is status quo. He's doesn't necessarily get older. He's not going to get really, really old in the comics. He's not going to, things are always going to be in a sort of a sitcom kind of situation where it's this, it's rinse and repeat. And that's really what he was getting at, that you have to have that status quo, or the continuity can become a real problem where he's married, he's now got kids, he's got all these issues, all these things that kind of go against that status quo can really cause continuity problems that just would make it impossible to write the character. They want to kind of keep that character somewhat consistent. They do have things where they have plot lines where he sometimes gets married, sometimes doesn't. All these things do happen, but for the most part, it returns back to the status quo, just like a sitcom. Okay. However, if you do want to get, and this is the other point that he was making, if you do want to get a story where you see that happily ever after for Peter Parker, or a more old Peter Parker where he's lived a few years and has gotten married to Mary Jane, well, read Ultimate Spider-Man. And a lot of people are liking Ultimate Spider-Man because he is a character who is no longer a teenager kid, barely able to tie his shoes, to an adult who's got family issues and is a superhero. So there's a different dynamic there. And with us older readers, that maybe is a little bit more appealing because it's more relatable. So there are options, is my point. And so I don't necessarily disagree with what he said. I think he's really just saying, this is what we're trying to do with the book. And if you're not interested in that, here's other books you can read. There's other stuff. So yeah. So I kind of think that's reasonable. Comics don't have to be everything for everyone. And there's lots of options out there. Toxic Pelican wrote, I have to laugh when you talk about Marvel, DC, etc. have a focus on publishing good stories when you yourself are mostly guilty of pushing the counter-narrative. Now, keep in mind that I'm saying this with a smile on my face, but isn't 95% of your content based on cover art? And I would say I'm guilty as charged on that. I do kind of focus on covers because in a way it's easier to make content where I'm just showing the cover. Okay. It's easier to just, oh, here's the cover. Oh, look at the cover. Okay. That's easier. Like if I have to read the book to you guys, a lot of you guys would get bored. I actually did a few videos early on where I was reading the books and they got really low views. People didn't like it. So I realized I'm not going to read the books anymore. Like on the channel. I do read the books, but I'm just not doing it on the channel. So I don't necessarily talk about the story as much. But that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in stories. Okay. I do read the stories. I actually read an entire series yesterday, like just because I was interested in the stories. I do try to find books to read, and I do enjoy reading the comics. I haven't read all of my comics, not even close to it. I think I've read a very small percentage, maybe like 10 to 20%. I keep on couching it because I'm not really sure. Like I have so many books. It's like hard to keep up with them all. But I have read a lot of them. I just have a lot more. And there are some that I'll probably never read because I just like the covers and the interior is kind of blasé. Especially modern books. Just there's nothing to drive me to read them. And that was really what my complaint is, that modern books, there's nothing really to grab you. I have tried to read a few of them, and every time I'm like regretting it. I like that cover a little bit less because I've read the interior. But there are some good books out there, and there's still some being made where they are modern books. And so I just think that my whole pitch to Marvel and DC is write better stories that make people like myself, who currently are just buying the covers, go one step further and actually read the stories. That's all I was trying to say. But I do base a lot of my content on covers because it's easier to show a cover quickly than the whole book or even get into the story details. Now, there's other channels that actually are pretty good about getting into the story details, and they do actually better than my channel. So, there is something there, but I just haven't done it personally. So yeah, I'm not perfect. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed these questions and answers. If you have a question you would like answered, put it in the comments below and I will do my best to answer it. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.